So I just wanted to come on real fast and share this with you guys. I think it's pretty exciting. So my last video I was talking about how I think that 2023 is a Jubilee year by two different types of Jubilees. And so I think we actually found another Jubilee that makes 2023 a Jubilee year. And so this was brought to my attention by brother Andreas, who runs the RawRepent YouTube channel. So I guess he was looking at the book of Jubilees in chapter 3. So if you look at verses 15 through 17 here, it says, "And in the first week of the first Jubilee, 1 through 7 Anno Mundi, Adam and his wife were in the Garden of Eden for 7 years, tilling and keeping it. And we gave him work, and we instructed him to do everything that is suitable for tillage. And he tilled the garden, and was naked, and knew it not, and was not ashamed. And he protected the garden from the birds and the beasts and the cattle, and gathered its fruit, and ate, and put aside the residue for himself and for his wife." Okay, so in verse 17 it says, "And after the completion of the 7 years which he had completed there, 7 years exactly," so starting at 8 Anno Mundi, right, and in the second month on the 17th day of the month, which is Heshvan 17, the same day as the flood of Noah, when the flood of Noah started. So on that day, the 17th day of the month, the serpent came and approached the woman, and the serpent said to the woman, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So what is this saying? So it's saying basically that Adam and Eve were placed in the garden, and they lived there together and worked in the garden for 7 years. Actually, for 7 years, 1 month, and 7 days. 17 days, rather. At which point the sin event occurred, and they were kicked out. So they're calling this. So they're saying basically that Adam and Eve were placed at the beginning of 1 Anno Mundi. And I know that Anno Mundi means year of the creation, but it can't possibly be that, because prior to this verse, Adam is doing stuff with God, like God has him name animals and stuff like that, and then he creates Eve for him, and so there's stuff going on prior to that. So obviously that's not the year of creation. I'm going to use Anno Mundi in my spreadsheet, but really it's just Anno Eden, if you want to consider it that. It's like the year that they entered the Garden of Eden. So what we did with this is we created a spreadsheet, and we started putting in all these years. So this first column here, we've got Anno Mundi. So that's 1 AM. That's the first year of Anno Mundi. That's when Adam was placed in the garden, okay, with Eve. And then they were in there for 7 years, okay? And then just like it said in Jubilees chapter 3, that in 8 Anno Mundi, or I'm calling it here 1 AF, so I just made that up, that's Anno Fall, so the year of the fall. That's when the sin event happened, right, on Heshvan 17. So this other column here is obviously just the Gregorian years that straddle the biblical year, so it's Tishri to Tishri. So I have the 1 Anno Mundi at 3978 BC to 3977, and then I've got the 1 Anno Fall at 3971 to 3970 BC. And then so I have these 3 columns here, which represent multiple concurrent Jubilee counts. So people generally they understand Jubilee as being the singular count, and they try to reconcile it that way, and they never really can. But to me, it says in the Torah that when you enter the land, you start counting, okay? And there are different instances of that count. So there are different instances of biblical events where somebody's entering land, okay? So really for these 3 here, the enterings of the land, so to speak, that they're based on. The first one here, I call it Eden Jubilee. That entering of the land then would be the entering of the Garden of Eden, okay? And then the second one, Sin Jubilee, which starts 7 years later. The land that's being entered there is the cursed ground, right? The world, right? That's outside of the Garden of Eden, because they just got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. They're exiting the Garden of Eden, so they're entering the world, the land of the world. So that's a different Jubilee count, okay? And then this third one here is the Israelite Jubilee. That's when the Israelites cross the Jordan and enter into Canaan, the promised land. Okay, so that's not gonna come until way later, right? So and then I have in that those cells, when it's Jubilee year, I actually mark it, right? So and then which number it is, right? So this is Jubilee 0 really, and then that happened at 1 a.m. and then at 1 Anno Fall you got Jubilee 0 for the Sin Jubilee count. Okay, and the Jubilee 0 for this Israelite Jubilee happens in 1408 BC, so that's quite a bit down there. So you can see here that you've got this 7-year period where Adam's in the garden before the sin event with his wife Eve. So that being said, let's scroll down, and it's something that Brother Andreas found that was pretty cool. If you go to here, so it just happens to be the 33rd Jubilee on the Sin Jubilee count is the year that Noah leaves the ark. So like the flood is over, the ground is dry, and he's getting out of the ark. So it's kind of like a Jubilee in a way, because you're re-entering the land, after it's been purged of the wicked, and that just happens to occur on a Jubilee year, but it's on this Sin Jubilee count. So that's Jubilee number 33. And then if we scroll down some more, we'll find the beginning of the time where the Israelites are in the Promised Land. Okay, so 1408 to 1407 BC. That date I got from T.W. Tram. He does like a Facebook ministry where he does a lot of posts with like dates and stuff like that. So he had a post on Jubilees, and he said that that's the year that Israel actually crossed the Jordan into the Promised Land. So that's where I marked Jubilee 1 for that particular count. And then if you go to Christ's time, the time of Christ, here we go. Yeah, so this is another nice alignment. You've got 30 AD, which is a year of the cross, and it happens to be Jubilee number 80 on the Sin Jubilee count. Okay. And then if we go to our time, so this is sort of the punchline here. Okay. This year, 2023 to 2024. That started on, well, it hasn't really started yet, right? Because we're not in the Feast of Trumpets on the true calendar. But it's starting this fall. Happens to be aligned with Jubilee number 120 on the Edenic Jubilee count, and Jubilee number 70 on the Israelite Jubilee count. So that is a amazing, remarkable alignment that just happens to be happening right now when we're in this crazy high rapture watch time. And these are not just random numbers of Jubilees either. These are nice round numbers, nice biblical numbers of 120 and 70. And I guess I'll point out real fast that these two Jubilees, the Edenic Jubilee and the Sin Jubilees, they're based on 50-year Jubilee counts, okay? And then this Israelite one is based on the 49-year Jubilee counts. And in Scripture, and also, things like the Book of Jubilees, which is outside of the canon, they talk about or allude to both, really, the 49-year Jubilee and the 50-year Jubilee. So in the Book of Jubilees, I forget which chapter, it talks about the life of Jacob and how he dies at 147 years. And then it says also that he lived for 3 Jubilees. So obviously that's using a 49-year Jubilee because, 49 times 3 is 147. But then in other places, like in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, it talks about God saying he won't strive with man forever. His time will be 120 years, which is most people accept as a reference to the 6,000-year history of man's self-government, which means obviously that's talking about a 50-year Jubilee type. So really, the Bible uses both. I don't know why, what the rhyme or reason behind that is. Brother Andreas suggested that perhaps the 49-year Jubilee is unique to the Israelites, and then the 50-year Jubilee is sort of like the Gentile or the standard non-Israelite Jubilee length. Okay, because Adam and Eve were just essentially Gentiles. They definitely weren't Hebrews, right? Because the Hebrews didn't exist yet. So yeah, that's possible. So So one thing I'll point out is that you've got now, not only is 2023, this year that has these two really, really hugely significant jubilees, but then you've got 7 years later, you've got the Jubilee number 120 on the Sin Jubilee count, okay? So you've got the Jubilee 120 on the Edenic Jubilee, and then 7 years later, this Jubilee 120 on the Sin Jubilee count. So that's the 7 years, right? And so you've got basically, in the beginning of time, you've got this 7 year period where Adam is in the garden for 7 years with his wife Eve, okay? And then you've got the 6,000 years of history. And then on the other end of it, you've got another 7 year period where the second Adam is going to be in heaven with his wife, right, with his bride. So that's just it's amazing. I think an amazing parallel. You've got the 6,000 years of human history bookended by these 7 year periods that are these like type matching in typology, right? It's like a matching pattern. And so that's in heaven, but on earth it'll be the 7 year tribulation. Okay. Another cool thing Brother Andreas pointed out to me was that so this year 2023 is 6001 Anno Mundi. Okay, and that number sort of looks like the age of Noah when he first got off of when he had his jubilee. He got off of the ark after the flood and he's re-entering the land. So it's kind of like a release, like a jubilee release of re-entering the land. And he was 601 years old at that point. And then we get the 6001 Anno Mundi. So that kind of rhymes with it, right? And then the 7 years later, you've got the same 6001 Anno Fall happening in 2030 at the year of the second coming. Which is, that number that keeps popping up, this sort of Jubilee type of number, 601, 6001. And so the other Jubilees that I was talking about in my last video, which correspond to like Yom Kippur War and the 1923 Mandate for Palestine. So that's just aligned basically with this Edenic Jubilee. So if you go back 50 years, you got the 1973, that's the Yom Kippur War. That's Jubilee number 119. Go back another 50 years to to 1923, and that's Jubilee number 118. So, yeah, that's cool. And the other thing that I found was that, let's see here. So the cool thing is, like, if you put it all out here, like, and list and enter it all into a spreadsheet, and then just start entering, biblical events that happen in history, you can start to find interesting alignments to the Jubilee counts of whichever Jubilee, right? Of the three that I've listed here, and so for instance, if you guys know the Aliyah, that means the first Jewish migrations back to the Holy Land after 1900 years. There was the first Aliyah, the second Aliyah, the third Aliyah. In fact, the first one happened in 1881, and in fact, the Shemitah that the Jews currently use is based on that first Aliyah, right? So I think, 7 years later or whatever, right? That's when they do their, that's their first Shemitah, and so all the subsequent Shemitahs are based on that. Anyway, so that's when this first Aliyah began in 1881. Well, that just happens, as you can see here, to line up with Jubilee number 117 on the Sin Jubilee count. So that's pretty nice alignment that I found just by poking around and looking to see. But I'm sure there's plenty more. I just created the spreadsheet yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to really, enter a lot of events other than the stuff that happened at creation and sort of the stuff that's happening in the time about near the end. But the Noah one, coming off of the ark, and the crucifixion, lining up with Jubilees, that was pretty big. That was sort of the first things I looked for. So yeah, this is what we've been working on. I think it's very exciting. It's just more evidence that we're in a Jubilee year, which means that the Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, happens on Tishri 10, on the true calendar this year, which is October 26th. So, well, October 25th to 26th. Those, Gregorian days straddle that Jewish date. So yeah, exciting times. So it looks like, this is pretty compelling, and Brother Andreas is going to be talking about this concept as well and putting it in his next video, which comes out tomorrow or the next day. So definitely check that out. I'll drop a link to that in the description section and probably the pinned comment as well, or at least to his channel. And when the video comes out, I'll throw that in there too. So I hope this little update was encouraging for you. And yeah, if you have any ideas or comments, just drop it in the comments below. And yeah, thanks for watching.